So one thing is to always keep a half an eye on Skipper, because he will kind of turn and nip towards you. A lot of lesson horses are girthy anyway. A lot of reasons, one of the reasons why a lot of horses tend to get nippy is they get girthy because somewhere along the line they've had students just jack that girth up super tight, and we want to do it gently. So now each of our horses get some different equipment. Rudy, as you probably saw, all he had was a girth, a saddle pad, and a saddle. That's all Rudy needed. But some of these horses, the way that they're built, we need to fill in the holes, especially the older ones as gravity takes place, and as we all know how gravity works, everything wants to go south. So Skipper has this. It's called a lift pad. You'll also see that Pumpkin has a lift pad. Clacky will have a lift pad, and they all look a little differently depending on how thick of a pad we need. We need these lift pads so the saddle sits straight, because we want our riders to sit straight. Otherwise, the lift pads in the back, the riders will be tilted back, and the horses really like the riders to be in the center of gravity, and we do too. And we always want to make sure when it's a lift pad for the back, we have no horses here that need what we call a wither pad. Horses that we need to fill in for fitting for the withers. But the wide part or the thick part always is in the back. I've had people not realize, and they put it on backwards. It's not a big deal. I can just change it. But I'd rather have you all know how it should be done. So the first thing that's going to go on is going to be the square pad. And we always use these square pads. If you watch horse shows, you're going to see pads that are shaped to fit the saddle. But these are great pads, and they'll use them for schooling too. If a saddle pad has tabs, that shows you that that's the front and this is the back. Some of our pads are embroidered. You always want the embroidery to be on the outside. And a lot of times, which you haven't watched these yet, there will be a little mark to kind of give you a hint, unless I've just washed them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the horse. And anytime you approach your horse, you always let them know you're coming. Give a nice pet. You're going to take the pad and you're going to gently put it on the back. And I've got the front pad right at the withers. Okay, now here's the tricky part. I'm going to put the foam pad on, then I've got to reach the saddle. If it's windy, it's going to blow. But I'm going to put the pad right about where I want it. You'll probably need to adjust it.
Before we continue with the demonstration, you may want to pause the video here so that you can identify the parts of the saddle.
And I'm going to grab the saddle. And this is the way the saddle goes on. The pommel goes to the front, the cantle goes to the back. Now I'm going to lift the saddle, and you're probably seeing in the Westerns how people chunk on the Western saddles. Don't like to do that. We want to put it on nice and gently. Want to make sure that all the underneath part of the saddle, that the panels aren't curled under. One very important thing, you want to take your thumb, or whatever works on your hand, and you want to tent this front part of the saddle pad, because you don't want it to be tight on his withers. You're going to take your hand and tent this pad so there's space between the withers and that pad. Because when you get a rider sitting on there and you tighten the girth, it is going to go down a little bit, so you want it loose. It's like putting on a shoe when your socks are too tight. Okay, so we use elastic girths. They have elastic on both sides, which has give. So some of you may think your girth is too loose when they actually aren't, because you can tighten it and tighten it and tighten it, but it's always going to have some give. So again, right before I put the girth on, I'm checking, because as the horse moves, the saddle will too. This is just a little bit of info. These girths have a little ring in the front that always faces front. That's for other training aids that we don't use, but if you're ever attacking a horse that needs some training aids, you want that to be in the front. So underneath, we have 3 straps called the billet straps. There is an extra one, that's why there's 3. And someone asked me, do you do the first 2 or first and third? You really should alternate so the billets wear evenly. If they're worn evenly, I like to do the first and second. But as long as you do the same on both sides, you're good. I start out with the girth fairly low, just so I don't have to pull it tight. Now, this is a tricky part for Skipper. So basically, Skipper, and again, if anyone's uncomfortable tacking him, I will happily tack him, so no worries. So you're going to keep your eye on him, because he knows when you go to reach around for the girth, it's time. And there's part of what he does. Now, in here, he's not going to be able to get to me as quickly as he will in the stall because he's on cross ties. So I'm going to, again, lift the flap here. I'm going to hold the girth taut. You want your billet to go through the top part where this roller is. Otherwise, if it goes through the bottom, it's a booger to get unbuckled. So I'm going to pull that up gently, start feeding the end of the billet through, and then a lot of people try to push the buckle. You don't want to do that. You grab the tip of the billet, hold it tight, and just pull. And again, gradually tighten up the girth. So usually you want to get it so it's on and the saddle's not going to slide underneath, but still fairly relaxed. Because the last thing I will do is check the girth and tighten it before the riders get on. So, and again, Skipper was on his best behavior today. Sometimes, like from the middle of the session on to the end, they all tend to get a little crankier, worn out, and he will kind of get crankier. And you'll learn about the leading as well. But does anybody have any questions or anyone want to see that again?
Does it make any difference which side you start on with the girth?
Not really, but because we've always learned that you tighten the girth on the left, simply because back in the day we only had girths that had elastic on one end, and you wanted to give to be on the side that you mounted, and usually you mount from the left. The left is also known as the near side, the right is known as the off side. So, but again, the girth now gives on both sides. And we may have a rider that might need to mount from the off side. We might have riders that need to mount from different ways. We have riders that dismount with their legs swinging over the front. We might have to have a rider that dismounts off the offside. So we just have to alter and be prepared. Okay, so unless there's any questions, I think everybody's got a pretty good handle on the tacking. And again, Skipper is the trickiest one. Clacky will sometimes nip too. Mandy sometimes, typical mare, she'll go, eh! She's a little girthy. Just keep in mind that a lot of these older lesson horses are so used to that they just get tired of it, and they'll let you know sometimes.